Occasionally, we'll be doing short videos that teaches you tips, tricks, or techniques on all things hunting and gathering. Hopefully, you're enjoying the videos and you're finding them helpful. So, are you ready to go learn something neat? All right, let's go.
Hi, today we're going to be talking about how to set up a bow, either just for target shooting or for hunting. So we'll cover both aspects. But basically, we got a bow here. Chances are you're going to buy it new with it already kind of set up. So you're going to have some kind of sights, usually a pin type sight. You're going to have a rest. There's a few different styles of rest. The one that we kind of like is called a whisker biscuit. But there's lots of rests that are good. And then you have just your main bow frame. They call it the riser, which is this piece, your limbs, and then the wheels here are called your cam. That's what gives you the mechanical advantage for a compound bow. And so once your bow's all set up, you're going to want to make sure you keep your string waxed. And I like to wax my string a couple times a year, but I like to wax it before I sight it in, because you're actually adding a little bit of weight to the bowstring and the way it rubs on itself, and so you want to do it first. So this is how we wax the string. This string's already been waxed, so I'm just going to wax a little bit of it to show you. But you'll basically rub wax on there, and it's a softer wax that's made for bowstrings. And then you take your fingers and you're basically rubbing it back and forth and all around, and you're kind of melting that wax with your fingers into this bowstring. Okay. And what that does is it extends your string life. Otherwise it'll want to get frayed and whatnot. And it even has some UV protectors in there. And also, if you were hunting out in the rain, it keeps your bowstring from getting wet, which would affect your shot because it's going to change the weight of the string. Okay. Next we have our arrow. And again, for hunting, you're going to have a broadhead. So there's lots of broadheads on the market. My personal preference is the Muzzy 100 grain fixed blade. In other words, these blades are always out. They don't fold in. Just had a lot of luck with this broadhead as far as bringing down animals. I also feel like the flight is real consistent with it. And so it's been good for me. But there's lots of choices out there. You can get a mechanical broadhead, which opens up upon impact. The only thing I don't like about those is you can't really practice with that mechanical broadhead. And so even though they'll give you a simulated tip that you can practice with, it's not identical, and so that kind of bothers me. But I know a lot of people that use them and they have luck, so it's really a personal preference. There's also a rule of thumb, like if you're hunting really wide game, like buffalo or something, you might just use a single blade broadhead, because the idea is you want something that'll penetrate really deep, and maybe it won't create as much blood, but it'll penetrate deep. But if you're hunting skinny game, like
Excuse me.
If you're hunting skinny game like javelina or turkey, you might want a broadhead that has a really wide cut, because you don't need it to penetrate far. You just need it to cause a lot of damage in that 6 inches that it does penetrate. So consider that. But I like the Muzzy 4-blade because I can use it on pretty much everything. I can use it on an elk, and I can use it on a turkey. And so I don't have to resight in my bow with different tips. So that's why I chose it. But if you're always hunting the same game, you might pick a more preferred broadhead for that particular animal. If you're just going to target shoot for fun, though, rather than have a broadhead, you'll have what they call a field tip. And you can see there's no blades on it. This is also what you'd use for small game if you're going to hunt rabbits, squirrels, that kind of thing. And also when you're first sighting in your bow, you should use field tips, because the broadheads tear up your target, and you really just want to use that at the very end to fine-tune it. But as far as those first 100 shots, when you're really getting it dialed in and you're really just getting used to shooting it, I would recommend field tips. Okay, so we got it all set up, and the next thing is let's look at the sights. So again, this is the most common type of sight, is a pin sight, and there's lots of different brands, but same idea. You have these different pins for different yardages. So typically you're gonna sight in your top pin at 20 yards, because anything from point blank to 20 yards, it'll essentially be close enough and hit. And then, most people go down in increments of 10 yards, so 30, 40, 50, 60. If you had a really fast shooting bow, you might do increments of 20 yards. but I would say 10 yards is pretty common. This bow's already essentially sighted in, so we're going to go ahead and shoot it. And we're going to go ahead and shoot broadheads because it's dialed in to the point that we don't need to shoot field tips any longer. If you're going to hunt with a bow, no matter what broadhead you're going to use, I do recommend at least taking a couple of shots with broadheads, because even though they fly similar to the exact same grain weight field tip or practice point or whatnot, there does tend to be a little bit of difference. And so since that's what you're going to take the animal's life with, I think it's important to shoot it with the exact same broadhead you're going to use in real life.
All right, everybody, so we're gonna go out and shoot my bow, and I shoot a 50-pound compound bow, and because of that, I'm not shooting nearly as fast as some of the other folks that are shooting 70 pounds. So my pins are set for 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60, and any further than that, my group just becomes so great that I'm not as accurate as I need to be in order to feel comfortable harvesting an animal. So I choose to sight my bow in typically at 20 and 40 when I'm just doing the pre-season sight in. But when I first set it up, I made sure that all my pins were hitting accurate. Today, I'm feeling good about my form. What I'm not sure of is whether or not I've knocked any of my pins and whether or not my string's been stretched, or just if anything's weird about the bow. But as far as my stance and form, I'm feeling good about that. So we're gonna go ahead and shoot it at 20 and 40, and if that's all looking good, then we can go ahead and feel comfortable with the other pins. So let's go out there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna shoot it 20 yards, and I have a release on, and the reason why I use this release is so that I can get consistent releases of my bowstring. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna load my arrow, and it's important that I load my arrow the same way every single time. So for me, I have my 2 orange fletchings and my white fletching. My white fletching is always up. I wanna make sure that I have my arrow secured in my rest, and I am ready to get into my form and take my shot. All right, so once I have it loaded, I'm treating it just like any weapon. I'm gonna point it in a safe direction, and I'm gonna go ahead and shoot. I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna hold the bow out while I connect my release. And if I'm in the moment, I tend to be a little bit stronger, but when I'm just doing practice, I do have to do a lift up in order to get that draw.
So where did it go? Okay.
So let's go ahead and shoot it one more time to see if it's my accuracy. All right, so I'm gonna actually shoot again. I got a little bit confused. We started talking about 10-yard pins, or as far as 10-yard placement of our pins, and I shot using my 30-yard pin, thinking that it was my 20-yard pin. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna shoot again. It was high, which is to be expected. I was shooting as if I was hitting a further animal, and so it would have given the bow or the arrow time to drop a little bit and actually hit my target. What's nice though is my left to right's looking really good.
So you said you're going to wait because it's windy?
Yeah, it's real windy.
So tell me about that.
So obviously a bow is a very large object. It's also got some fletching. It's going to catch a lot of air as it's being shot if it's real windy. And so that's another thing that you have to take into account when you're hunting archery. Rain, wind, a lot of those things are going to affect your accuracy. And so you might choose to just not hunt at all during that time. But if you do choose to hunt at that time, you're going to definitely want to shoot a lot closer yardage to compensate for that inaccuracy that's going to be thrown off by the weather.
And you bring up a good point. As far as if I was fine-tuning my sights, I wouldn't want to do it unless it was a dead calm day. But if you're just trying to build up strength and get familiar shooting your bow, and you're just trying to get it in the ballpark, you can go out on a windy day and do that, but you definitely want to come out on a calm day and fine-tune your sights before you go hunting.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we have a little bit of a lull, and so I'm gonna go ahead and take my shot. Yeah, so this is the 20-yard 20-yard shot using the 20-yard pin, and here's the 20-yard shot using the 30-yard pin.
Okay, so your bow, if an animal is 10 yards further, your bow is gonna drop about 10 inches, it looks like.
Yeah, at least at those first couple of lengths between 20 and 30. The farther out you go, the more and more inaccurate it's gonna go.
Okay, so that makes sense that you would have pins every 10 yards because it makes a difference. But if somebody's bow only dropped 3 inches at 10 further yards, then maybe they would do 20 yards apart or 15 yards apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or even have a bow that went out to 70 or 80 yards.
Okay.
And we talked about that paper plate size. And if this is where I'm aiming, if I'm hitting within a paper plate size area, so about the size of my hand as far as the width, I'm in the zone. So this is looking good as far as 20 yards goes. I'm shooting exactly where I need to be shooting. Obviously, perfect world, that'd be a perfect shot and I'd hit right there. All right, so given where my shot placement is, once I'm using the correct pin at the 20 yards, I'm feeling good about it. I'm not gonna adjust it. But if I were to adjust it, what you have to remind yourself is the adjustments are gonna be the opposite of what you need. So if you need your shot to be raised up, you're gonna lower your pin. And the reason why you do that is as you're holding your bow, you're using your pins as your target location. And so if I raise my pin, now in order to get that pin on my target, I've now bent my bow down, I've angled it down. So that's gonna make it shoot lower. So it's kind of a backwards concept. It's not necessarily intuitive, so you have to keep that in mind. That's also the same for left to right. If I need to have my bow shoot a little bit more to the left, I'm gonna move my pin to the right. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and shoot at 40 yards now, just to make sure that all the pins are doing what they need to do and I'm doing what I need to do. It's shooting a little bit to the right, but that's exactly what the wind's doing. So I don't want to adjust for that.
Yeah, like you're saying, since there is a slight wind, you really can't complain where these shots are hitting, because this is with broadheads. This is exactly what you'll be using deer hunting. And so it's pretty good. If it was dead calm, though, you might adjust it a little, you know, but like you're saying, that's the direction the wind's blowing, so that's probably accounting for those couple inches to the right.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and shoot my bow a couple more times. Aaron already sighted his bow in yesterday, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We are planning on going archery deer hunting, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, so we're super excited about that. And we'll see you next time when we go get something to eat.